What if the Invincible War happened in DC Comics? I saw quite a few people commenting this idea in some of my recent Invincible videos that I should tackle this idea, and a great idea indeed. You guys who have been on this channel for a long time know I like to take stories that don't happen in DC and try to mold them in ways that it could happen in DC. One of the closest connections of stories that I imagine could be similar to something like this, it's what happened when the evil Batman from the Dark Multiverse came over to the Prime Earth to wreak havoc. Unless there is another story out there like this in DC that I can't really think of right now. Some people thought I should do Invincible Wars for each individual character, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and so on. For now, what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to give you an overall story on how I think an Invincible War could work in DC. This one is very heavily centered on Superman. So let's get into it. The main villain of DC's Invincible War, in which I think we could call this the Superman War, would be Brainiac. This is going to be a Brainiac who is part Coluan, and he obviously has technological augmentations on his body because he is still so heavily Coluan, he's still so heavily organic. He does have a lot of emotional attachments and feelings to things, especially materialistically. The amount of things that he has captured and taken pride in, he would never want to see that stuff taken away from him. Also, his ego is on a whole other level. And I do have this idea during this particular story and time period, he's not even really called Brainiac. He's actually called Viltrumites, his alien counterpart name. He has not fully taken on the Brainiac role as of yet. So for quite some time, Vril, or Brainiac, his goal has been to take over Earth, or at the very least take pieces of Earth, bottle up cities, and also capture Superman. But every time he has tried, Superman always manages to get the upper hand. This time around, their most recent matchup, Superman doesn't just defeat Brainiac, he also destroys his Brainiac ship and either destroys or takes away his collection from him. So a very heavily defeated Brainiac, not just by losing all of his materialistic items, all of his information he has gathered over the years, but even his body needing of extreme repairs, he returns back to the planet of Colu, where his superiors take it upon themselves to nurse him back to health, basically. Now, in this version of Brainiac and Colu, the way I imagine it, he has people that he answers to. Brainiac is essentially an agent to the planet of Colu that is sent out into the universe to gather information to better their people and to also follow through on missions to capture people like Superman. But every time Brainiac fails or an agent needs to come in for repairs, these higher ups, these council members, these lead scientists, whoever they are, they view failure as just an opportunity to upgrade their agents with more technology, more power through augmentations. With that comes the expectation that Brainiac or any other agent would be stronger and smarter after they get implanted with all these new devices. Now, because of Brainiac and maybe some of these other scientists, council member, higher ups, they have journeyed to the fifth dimension. And in the fifth dimension, they have unlocked so many other technological capabilities that the rest of the universe simply doesn't have. They've been able to find the ability to travel through space and time and to visit different Earths around the multiverse of DC. So they now give Brainiac this doorway into other dimensions. Just like in the Invincible War, there will be 16 Supermen that Brainiac will have to go off to and try to convince them to work for him. Every single one of the Supermen that Brainiac is obviously going to be employing are going to be evil versions of him or anti-villain versions at the very least. Every single one of these Supermen will be promised some sort of value that will be given to them if they help Brainiac in this cause. Now, I don't have all 16 versions of evil Superman all laid out for you, but I do have some ideas. If you wanted to use already existing evil Supermans out in the multiverse, you could go with Injustice Superman, bring him into the fold. You could bring in Superboy Prime. He might be extremely too powerful for this story, but I imagined a Superman who would perhaps be Darkseid's herald. I imagined a Superman who is recently resurrected from the dead, so he's wearing his black and silver suit, but when coming back, he actually returns evil. Maybe a Superman who has completely given up on humanity and now only sees humans as playthings. There's 16 evil Supermans, infinite amounts of possibilities on how to make them evil. So when arriving at Earth, their main goal is to go city by city, destroying everything and everyone, killing as many people as possible. From Brainiac's point of view, if you can preserve some of the cities so that he can bottle it up later, he absolutely will, but that is no longer the priority of this. Since Brainiac is still heavily the organic version of himself, his emotions of anger towards Superman is clouding a lot of his judgment, and at the end of this, he simply wants Earth relatively destroyed, their people suffering, and Superman pretty much subdued, if not dead, by the end of it. This is a all hands on deck situation. Every single hero is mobilized. Whether they are fighting Superman, helping civilians flee cities, getting people to safety, it's not going to be perfect by any means, but every hero is trying to do whatever they possibly can. Maybe even some villains, like 16 evil Supermen. Yeah, this is ridiculous. We might have to be a hero for once. A lot of key areas would be getting attacked all over the world, whether they be capital cities of countries or very well populated areas. Metropolis and Gotham 100%. You'd probably see Los Angeles and New York getting hit. London, England, Japan, maybe Vancouver, Toronto, pretty much anywhere that is heavily populated and that the world sees as staple cities, they're definitely getting attacked. Strikers Island, 100%, you'd have a Superman in there who's letting all the inmates out, especially all the crazy ones who don't care about the chaos. Batman, the Batcave, and whoever's a member of the Bat family at that time, 100% getting assaulted. Themyscira for sure, which would bring Wonder Woman back to her people, trying to defend it as much as possible. Even Atlantis, you would potentially see a Superman going underwater, trying to destroy as much of it as he can as well. Then the Watchtower. We would likely have some sort of team who all have to band together and assure that Superman does not take it over for Brainiac or whatever they got planned. The problem here that Superman has, and he's not wrong for thinking it, he's extremely overwhelmed, very stressed and anxious, of course. He realizes that even if everyone bands together to take down these Supermen, this is evil Superman. It's already ridiculous enough to try and take me on, but we're taking on 16 variations of me who do not hold back and have probably unlocked potentials in themselves because they don't hold back. Cities are burning and crumbling, people are dying, and Superman knows that there's a really good chance they might not be able to stop this. All around the world, not only would civilians be getting killed by this war, but a lot of heroes and metahumans would also be dying to these evil Supermen as well. It would get to the point where a lot of heroes would know they would die, but in their sacrifice, they would do all they can to take that particular Superman Superman with them. And along with that is kryptonite. I remember DC having some sort of explanation before. Kryptonite does not work on every Superman. Every Superman's kryptonite is different in their own ways, literally within the DNA of the stone or the rock. So I don't think it would be as simple as taking the kryptonite supply that Luthor or Wayne would have and throwing it at those Supermen. They're probably going to be immune to it. At this point, Batman, Cyborg, and Firestorm would be finding ways on how to replicate the highest amount of red solar energy as possible so they could deploy it against certain Supermen. At the very least, they can weaken them and imprison them in some way. I don't really know how you're going to imprison an evil Superman. Then after, Superman can figure out a way on how to deal with them if they can get this war all said and done. Some of the ideas I came up with is the Flash would find a way to trap one of the Supermen into the Speed Force, but in doing so, Flash also gets lost in it with that Superman. So for better or worse, they're completely gone with no one capable of reaching them, not knowing where they are. That's a sacrifice they'd have to take. I think Firestorm would get overwhelmed by a Superman. He's getting his body crushed to death. Firestorm implodes himself into a massive red solar energy explosion, which maybe kills that Superman in the process. In the Watchtower, everyone evacuates because they're getting absolutely dummied by one of the evil versions. And Lex Luthor is maybe left alone with the Superman, getting choked out, gasping on his last breaths. He rigs the Watchtower to blow, and maybe it is a particular explosion that would be enough to even kill Superman. Lex saying something like, "I've always wanted to be able to bring you down with me," or something like that. And now the Watchtower is completely gone along with Lex Luthor. This is like all bets are off. No matter how you have to defeat these particular Superman variants, you gotta do what it takes to subdue them or even kill them, because if you don't, they're taking the entire planet with them. As the course of 3-4 days goes on and Earth is basically a big ball of flame and smoke, half of these 16 Superman variants have been killed or subdued, which means there are still 8 left still roaming around. They all arrive at Kent Farms to hold Martha Kent hostage with the potential of threatening her with death to gain Superman's attention. During their assault on Earth, Brainiac has been hovering in some sort of ship above Earth, being away from all of the chaos. He's created a technological device that will allow him to siphon and harness these 8 Superman's powers and abilities. Now, the power of 8 Supermen will be thrown into one Brainiac. So after betraying these 8 Supermen, Brainiac opens up a portal to a world where Krypton is still alive, but it is just completely barren, and their chances of survival on it 1 in a million, maybe more. Closing the portal and keeping them trapped on that version of Krypton, Superman, with of course the help of Justice League characters and other heroes who are still alive and got some fight in them, have to go up against Brainiac together, because there's probably no way even Superman could do this all on his own. The fight is massive and deadly. I even imagine particular characters would probably get killed off in this battle sequence. Kansas farmlands are just getting absolutely destroyed and cratered. So this wasn't a particularly easy battle for Brainiac himself either, but most of the heroes that assisted Superman, he does manage to not kill everyone, but at least beat down everyone so that they're not a threat at the moment. And Superman tries one last tactic. In order to beat Brainiac, Superman allows himself to be grabbed by him and also allows for his powers to be siphoned by Brainiac. Now, Brainiac also has those tentacles on his back, which, to add insult to injury, he starts to stab Superman in certain areas, causing extreme pain. Brainiac still is uncertain whether or not he wants to kill Superman, but one thing he does know is he wants this to last, he wants it to hurt, and he wants the Man of Steel to finally know that he got the upper hand on him. He's finally beating him. In his arrogance, his biggest mistake is while he siphons some of Superman's powers, he notices some sort of power chip on the back of Brainiac's neck glowing and getting brighter. That's the technological device that he slotted into himself to allow him to siphon this much power and energy. And using every amount of might he has left, Superman reaches over, digs his hand into Brainiac's neck, rips the chip out, ensuring that the siphoning comes to a complete stop, causing a major amount of technological and system glitches, even the organic pieces of his body not operating right. Superman takes this as his time to start ripping out any technological pieces from Brainiac's body that he could use as weapons towards Superman or anyone else. This is where Superman just takes the time to sit down, take a breather, and as he sits there and thinks about how to deal with Brainiac, who's kind of sitting there lifeless, hardly able to move his body, perhaps maybe drooling from the mouth or something, his body starts to disappear, kind of like data being wiped from a computer screen, and he just vanishes. Well, Brainiac is teleported back to Kolu, the head council members, the head scientists. They saw his failure and brought him back, but they also saw their failure. The Superman is far more powerful than they could ever imagine. Vril Dox is not quite the Brainiac they want him to be. And as he kind of lays on an operating table, the Kolu scientists decide that they are going to fully strip Vril of every organic piece of himself to make him into the true, real Brainiac. He will now be Brainiac, the full machine, driven by technical domination rather than emotional conquest. But with the Brainiac threat somewhat removed, the world begins to recover. Heroes all over the world trying to help in any way they can. Superman trying to rebuild Metropolis. But things do not end on a happy note here. General Zod shows up, claiming he is going to take over Earth and turn it into New Krypton. There it is, the Invincible War if it happened in DC Comics. So if you guys liked it enough, perhaps I could go off and try this again with maybe Batman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, or whoever else you might want to see. But with that being said, leave in the comments below what you thought of the story. That's all I got for you on this one. So until the next time, I will talk to you all very soon.